Welcome back to Carneades.org. Today we're going to be continuing with our series, Dumbfounding Definitions, Dizzying Distinctions, and Diabolical Doctrines, a series sorting through some of the jargon of philosophy. In this video, we're going to be continuing with our look into free will with a video on what is determinism. Now, broadly construed, determinism is the claim that any state of affairs is perfectly determined by a previous state of affairs. Theological determinism is the position that this is due to a deity necessitating a specific series of events with no possible alternatives. But there are many other kinds of determinism. Other kinds of determinism base the claim on the laws of physics behaving in a certain way and everything obeying those laws. Or causal theories that for every effect there must be some cause, and therefore everything goes back in an eternal chain of cause and effect, and every effect is exactly determined by its cause, and every cause is determined by its cause, and so on and so forth. In other words, there is a reason that everything happens one way and not another. There's no real randomness in the world. Even if you flip a coin, the result of that coin flip is going to be determined on the wind speed, exactly how the coin lands, how hard you flipped it, and the laws of physics. You could calculate or figure out how that coin will land. Where it will land, heads or tails, is determined from long before you flipped the coin. Although this may seem to disallow free will and, to a certain sense, moral responsibility, it may not. While a libertarian sense of free will, that claim that free will is the ability to do otherwise, check out my video on libertarian free will, the previous one in this series, if you're more curious about that, is impossible. A compatibilist definition of free will, which has more to do with exactly what's required to have moral responsibility and free will in a kind of soft sense, may be possible, depending on whether you are a hard determinist or a soft determinist. It's important to note that sometimes when people talk about determinism, they mean hard determinism, the claim that both the world is deterministic and free will doesn't exist. We're going to take a look at that specifically in an upcoming video just called Hard Determinism. For this video, we're just covering the claim that everything in the universe is determined. So that includes both compatibilists that say everything is determined but we can still have free will because we're going to define it differently, and hard determinists that say free will doesn't exist and everything in the universe is determined. So, with that, let's take a look at the trilemma to get a better sense of these positions. So we have a trilemma of the universe follows deterministic laws, free will is the ability to do otherwise from those laws, and free will exists. Determinism is any position which claims the first premise is true. So we have two different positions that do this, hard determinism and soft determinism, or compatibilism. Incompatibilism is any position which claims that the second premise is true, that our definition of free will is right. And we're going to cover that in a later video, as well as the position which I'm going to call freedomism, which is kind of a disjunctive position, which is why it doesn't really have a name, which claims that the third premise is true, that we do in fact have free will. So, with that, let's take a look. There are several reasons one might believe in determinism, both as a position on its own or simply as a rejection of libertarian views of free will. One reason for supporting determinism is a theological one, which stands in stark contrast to the theological defense of libertarianism. It's important to note that theism writ large doesn't have a specific view on this, and that there are religious arguments that are based in theology for either a very deterministic worldview or a very radically free or libertarian worldview. There are a few reasons a theist might hold the view of determinism. If one believes, for example, that God is omnipotent, anything that happens is because he wills it. Therefore, humans do not have free will. They're just following God's plan. Another is based on omniscience. If one believes that God is omniscient, then God knows what you will choose in the future. And therefore, it's predetermined because God already knows it. And if the only thing you can know are things that are already true, it's already true what you're going to do. So there's no way you could do something other than what you're already going to do because God already knows what you're going to do. The position is particularly challenging, though, in the face of the problem of evil, given that such a God could surely prevent there from being evil in the world, and the free will defense, importantly, will not work, because the free will defense does require a defense of libertarian or libertarian views on free will, metaphysical libertarianism, the position we looked at in the last video, which is a direct denial of determinism, broadly construed. However, this is not the only reason one might believe in determinism. Another is based on the laws of science. Physics attempts to use laws to explain the motion of bodies of matter. If it's successful and all movement can be explained, including the movements of electrons and along the neurons in your head, then determinism is true. If physics can explain how everything moves, we can get back to a point where, as long as we take a snapshot of everything, where it is and where it's going, physics can tell us where it's going to go in the next second, the next second, the next second. You get a computer powerful enough, you can predict the entire universe and prove that everything's deterministic. Even if we haven't gotten to that point, or even if there were no way for us to get such a computer, if that is even theoretically possible, it makes the case for determinism. One element of modern physics that libertarians often cite to attempt to discount determinism and prove their theory is quantum physics. So it's important to look at this. The issue at stake here is that matter behaves both like a wave and like a particle. If matter is modeled as a wave, we're able to use our tools to measure its momentum, but not its position. However, if we model it as a particle, our tools and models allow us to measure its position, but not its momentum. According to the libertarian, this means that we will never be able to measure the position and momentums of all particles, and therefore the universe is not deterministic. There are a range of issues with this claim that fit broadly into the categories of underdetermination of observations of quantum particles and a lack of connection between quantum mechanics and the conscious process that we generally associate with free will. So let's take a look. The first issue with libertarians' conclusions is an issue of contrastive underdetermination. Check out my series on the problem of underdetermination for more on that. Basically, while we have mathematical equations that can perfectly predict the behavior of our instruments when presented with a certain stimulus, there are multiple theories that fully explain the phenomena that we see. In other words, the first premise of the following argument has not been proven. Premise 1, if we see behavior X in our instruments, we can conclude Y about free will. Premise 2, we see behavior X, conclusion, therefore Y about free will. We're not taking issue with the claim that we do see behavior X. The question is about the background beliefs, what Thomas Kuhn would call the paradigm. The claim that if we see behavior X in our instruments, it means this deep thing about free will. Because if we exist in a different paradigm, or when we undergo a scientific revolution and enter into a new paradigm, we might have some level of Kuhn loss and lose some of those pieces of information, including potentially the implication that this particular behavior in our instruments leads to us to have a particular conclusion. And so because we have this underdetermination about whether or not our paradigm is correct, not about the actual empirics of the results of the particular test you're running, but the meaning of those tests for things like free will, we have a problem with concluding strongly that free will certainly exists based on a particular individual test. This is a quick summary of problems of underdetermination. Check out my series on underdetermination for more on that. Put another way, if we're unsure if we may one day come up with a way to measure all the relevant attributes of particles, which might turn out to look very different than treating matter either as a wave or as a particle, rather we've come up with a better model that can deal with all of the nuances of matter and treats it neither as a wave or as a particle, but as something completely different. And even if we cannot in principle measure them, it doesn't mean that they don't exist. Even if you could never know the velocity and position of an electron, it doesn't follow that it does not have a velocity and a position, simply that we cannot measure both at the same time. As philosophers would say, it's putting the epistemic cart before the metaphysical horse. Check out my video on that as well. Just because you can't know something doesn't mean it's not true. This doesn't prove determinism by any stretch of the imagination. But it doesn't prove libertarianism either. Quantum mechanics doesn't do quite as much work as the libertarians want it to do in proving that free will absolutely exists. However, a more powerful critique of libertarian arguments using quantum mechanics is that it falls short of showing that free will really exists. If quantum states are not determinate, then this is a property of all matter, not just conscious matter. There's a monumental amount of work to be done to show how indeterminate states of matter, such as indeterminate states of a table, or a building, or a pile of concrete, or a tree, can translate into free will. Translate into free will in humans, but not in fire, not in a tree, not in a nuclear explosion. Additionally, if things are indeterminate at the micro level, there is not strong evidence that this impacts the way they behave at the macro level. The position and velocity of an electron have nothing to do with your stealing bread to feed your starving family. That connection is required for the libertarian to prove that these quantum states and these quantum things can demonstrate that a libertarian law-breaking understanding of free will actually exists. And that's yet to be proven or yet to be shown, and there's no concrete way yet to draw all the way up from the micro to the macro level. That's not to say that it can't be done and it can't be found. It's simply to say that the libertarian hasn't proven their case yet. And as a skeptic, therefore, I'm doubtful. I'm doubtful of both sides, but I'm definitely doubtful of that argument. The third reason one might believe in determinism is from the point of view of causation. So taking a step back from quantum mechanics for a second. Basically, even if you're concerned about the laws of physics and conscious that they may change as new data becomes available, it seems that every effect we observe is caused by something. Why does something happen in one way instead of another? Determinism allows for a causal chain all the way back to the original position of existence. What caused that original position is the subject of the column cosmological argument, and you can argue about whether or not God caused the position, the Big Bang caused that position, we're all just in a circle going around and around and around, and there's no cause to that initial position because it's just a loop of a chain as opposed to a line. You could set that aside. The point is, for the determinist, if you have that initial position and you have causality, not even the laws of physics, just the idea that you can't have an effect without a cause, then you have a strong enough case for determinism. Libertarians are committed to the claim that nothing caused you to make a decision one way or another when you were acting freely. Your decision was in some way uncaused. And that is very concerning for anyone that has the opinion that you can have a causal chain of events going all the way back. That there's not complete and total kind of randomness in the world. That all effects have some cause. When asked why someone decided one thing instead of another, the libertarian has no real answer. They can't say that they did it because they had particular reasons or they were influenced by their biology or their upbringing, because while all those things may impact your decision, at the end of the day, you can choose against them. You can choose against your reasons, against your upbringing, against all of that for the libertarian. They can't explain your decisions in anything beyond the kind of primitive, unexaminable, you did it freely, and I can't say anything more. This turns out to be a problem for a couple of reasons. Luck and reasons for action. With respect to luck, it's possible for you to choose either option of a choice, then there is a possible world where you make the other choice. Since there is nothing in the world that causes you to make one choice or the other, the world that you end up in is merely a matter of luck. It's not actually a matter of choice, because there's a you that made a different choice in a different possible world, and there's a you that made this choice in this possible world. If this is a matter of luck, then we are not actually morally accountable. Even if you sui generously generated your decision completely separate from all other causes, because it's only luck that this you got stuck in this possible world and someone else went down another pant leg of time, as it were. It's just chance. It's not actually your free will. You're not morally responsible, because it's just luck you're here and not there. It's luck that you chose to steal the bread, or it's luck that you chose not to. Another reason for concern with libertarianism is the issue of reasons. Generally, people say that they act for particular reasons, or that reasons have an influence on their decisions. If we're free in a libertarian sense, then we are able to act even if we have no good reason to do so. Many people think that we are constrained by reasons, or at least that we are influenced them. Being told there is a deadly gas outside your room may cause you to stay inside. It is a challenge for the libertarian to explain how you could freely make such a choice, given that without that information, you would have left the room, but with it, you would not. It seems that the information does actually determine your actions, and yet it seems you're also making a free choice. So there's some question on how we can constitute that choice to not leave the room as a choice of free will, because it was determined by the reasons you were provided with. Next up, we're going to be taking a look at what is hard determinism. This is a variety of determinism that both holds the position we talked about here, but also the position that free will does not exist at all. Watch this video and more here at Carneades.org. Hit that notification button and be sure to subscribe if you want to stay up to date on all the new videos that we publish, and make sure you catch this next video in the series. And as always, stay skeptical, everybody.